Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Doctor Who season finale, a great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This is the culmination of the Flux, event. Obviously, we're picking up immediately after Swarm ends up killing, essentially the Doctor's mom, but the Doctor doesn't plan on sticking around, but the Swarm and Azure have her memory, so it's like, cool, like, you're gonna stick around with us, but the Doctor removes the pin that basically kept her tethered to outside of this universe, but the Swarm grabs her in that moment, and because the rules are weird, because they are an in-between space between two different universes, it leads to her getting split into three different versions of herself. One ends up on Cara Vista's ships with Belle, and then the other one ends up being with Yaz, Dan, Jericho, Joseph Williamson, and Kate, who just showed up. But she's reading like, oh, you're here with I've registered the fact is that you've been around at least two of you been around the TARDIS, and so it's just like, wow, I love the line from Belle being like, oh, you look unstable. I don't know who you are, but you look unstable. She's like, hey, I'm the most stable person I know. By getting excited, like, oh my god, yes, Dan, Kate, Jericho, and some Victorian guy. I love it. But when she found out, well, let's bounce between what each of the Doctors is doing. First and foremost, the Doctor that's with the Swarm, they once again have her memories. And the house that she saw, that weird structure, is that. And I'm curious why it manifested itself like that. Essentially, it's the place to keep all that she is. So if they destroy it, they're like, it's meant to be a torturing thing of like, oh, I can do this forever. Because Azure, when he breaks it, the more damage he's causing to her. Because I wonder, is it just because of like, just on a psychic level of I'm bringing you into this place and then I'm destroying this place that has all your memories, and so it is like kind of destroying you at the same time? Or is it just like everything that you were is in here, like, oh, like, don't you want to go inside, Doctor, or are you scared to go inside? But because that version of the Doctor is probably in her weakest like state, because it's just for one being split across three different places, which one of you is still like in between. You're outside of the universe, while the other two versions of you are at different points in said universe. So there's that. Then there's the one with Carna Vista and Belle, who, because the Centaurians are doing their thing to try and conquer everywhere, so the Doctor allows herself and them to be captured. It's like, right, me and Carna Vista will be like their captured subjects. Belle, you go do your thing. But sadly, Carna Vista learns first and foremost about, well, the Doctor has a moment with him being like, right, I had a faint memory about you and me and Atropos, so we worked together, and he was like, yes, but he can't talk about it because being a part of the division. So even if you get away from the division, which, like, how do you ever really truly get away from that? Like, I don't know whether he's still, I wonder if he's still on kind of call with the division, or is it just a situation of he is allowed, I guess because the thing inside of him, he's like, basically, it's going to inject poison in my brain and kill me in 3 seconds if I ever talk about the division. Because yes, the Doctor's mom is gone, but she was just one of many. Like, the division is kind of this all-stretching eternal thing. So I guess even if she's gone, someone else is going to rise through the ranks, because we don't know how that leader system works in that. Like, who does the torch get passed to? You would think if any, I guess arguably if the Doctor had returned to division like her mom wanted to, then it probably would have been a thing of, oh yeah, like it probably most likely would have passed to her at some point in time, but who knows? Like, that's something that's still left up in the air, and I'm sure we're going to circle back to that, because the whole division thing was not settled and completely gotten rid of. But the Doctor, and I love this line where the Doctor's like, wait, you were my companion. And he was like, yeah, like, we went through so much together, and then you just left. He's like, I went to the other side of the universe, and you still like came crashing into my life. I think that's so interesting because the Doctor has a tendency to do that, like leave that void in people's lives. It's like once you stop traveling with the Doctor, like what that does to you. So it's not just her more recent companions that have kind of gone through that. It's even Carnivista is like, I mean, because we still don't even know who the other people were. They might have been other agents, but it seems like her and Carnivista like had that like bond of like, yeah, we were partners, like we went through everything together. So to have that, you know, it's like to have someone who's been by your side for so long just up and disappear like that. It's like, man, that's harsh. And, you know, especially the Doctor knowing, it's like she didn't leave on, I mean, but she also doesn't know why she left. It's like, I don't have the memories. Especially for him, it's like, I remember everything we went through together, and for you to stroll back in my life like it was nothing, you know? And that's a harsh reality. And I was like, you actually feel really bad for him, especially at the same time that the Centaurans tell him, like, oh yeah, all your people, the Lipari, they're dead. We, like, shot them all out of the airlock. So it's like, yeah, they're all dead. He's the last of his species. It's like, damn, that's rough. Then you have, like, the Grand Serpent interrogating the Doctor, which we find out what he is. He is, a binary demi-species. Apparently they're super rare. But he's trying to figure, because she's trying to say, like, why are you working with the Centaurans? It's like it doesn't make any sense. Anyone that's ever tried to work with them got screwed over at some point in time. But it's like, oh, you're going to try and screw them over first and be the one who's like, oh, I'm going to be the savior. I'm going to be the hero in all of this. Which it is interesting how a lot of people kind of point themselves as the de facto savior in some shape or form, whether it's Grand Serpent or whether it's Centaurans, because they look at themselves as both vanquishers, conquerors, and saviors in their own regard. But then we also have the same thing for Swarm and Azure. But they treat time like that. But we'll circle back to that. Like I said, on the flip side of things, the Doctor is a big fan of the other Doctor. Obviously, she's happy to see Yaz, and it struck her a little bit when Yaz is like, "Oh, it's been a couple years." It's like, oh, like, it's like, I didn't know I'd be away from you for that long. It doesn't feel like that for her, but with the current time frame and everything, it's like, yeah. That also, well, time is what it is, because I was about to say, like, well, that was 3 years away from her family and stuff, like no time to even just go back home. But it's like, well, that's relative, because of you can drop back in at any point in time. But you know how that typically goes when it comes to time travel. But Dan was like, yeah, she's amazing. She is amazing. And Yaz is like, all right, just calm down, like with all like the sappy stuff of like, buttering me up like that. But also, she, like I said, she's a big fan of Joseph Williams. It's like, Mad Mole. She's like, oh my god, like you're on my list. Well, it's more like a book. Well, it's more like a library. And then she's got like, tell me everything, but the short version. It's like, oh my god, can you get a word in edgewise? And you see like Dan and Yaz laughing. But essentially, he stumbled across all of this. Seeing because for him, the furthest future he saw was 2021. Now, in retrospect, it makes sense because that's supposed to be the end result. But for him, it's like, I got to see so many worlds. And it's like, you could actually see an interesting parallel between him and the Doctor, like the adventure of being able to see all these different worlds, alien species, different planets, different times. But then he actually built the whole tunnel system and these doorways, make it a little easier on himself, but he stumbled across the end of everything, the final flux of it, and he wanted to make an underground city. That's what he was working on in his original time, knowing what was coming. He wanted to build an underground city, and everyone at the time thought he was mad, and that's how we kind of like the final piece of like what he was actually up to, aside from just the tunnels, knowing what role he played in this. He was trying to build, even at that time, he was trying to build an underground city to protect humanity, which the Doctor was like, no, like, it wasn't all for nothing. Like, you were trying to save humans because he knew the surface wouldn't be safe, but he was hoping maybe underground he could save as many people as possible. So now that things have come to this, it's finding out from Kate about where the Centaurans are kind of working out from, and that's where the other Doctor, Carnivista, and Bell are. So the Doctor takes the team there, which we have the Doctor saving the Doctor. It's like, hey, look at you. It's like, wait, there's two of you. I know. And then like stopping the Grand Serpent, and it's just like one of the Doctors being like, that's what I would have done. And Dan's like, that is what you did. I love it. It's so good. And it's just like, I mean, it's not the first time we've had multiple Doctor Not even the first time we've had multiple versions of the same Doctor, you know? But I just think that's so neat, and it's just kind of like, oh, like, you get to kind of play off yourself. It's like, oh, that's going to be a lot. Bell luckily got the information they needed, because it turns out, well, they ended up getting Claire, and, well, they met up with Claire back in 67, and she's so excited to see Jericho. And the Doctor's like, oh, everything worked out. It's like, well, they need her help because of her abilities. She wants to send Claire and Jericho undercover, basically, because the Centaurans are trying to find where the flux event is happening. Now, the question is, why are they trying to find out where that is, exactly what time, and exactly what place? But they ended up finding it a lot faster, because all the humans they've tried to use it on end up dying. So it's like, oh, either success or death. And I love Jericho being like, so what is our reward if successful? Death. You know, it's like, yeah, they're pretty simple-minded in what they do. But because of Claire's circumstances, she was able to, like, actually be the key factor in figuring out when they finally pushed her, because, well, she's different from everyone else. Like, it's almost, what was it? They kind of, like, she's kind of got that seer type of position and stuff like that, so they ended up tracking down a Centauran who was in a corner store, because, like, the Doctor's like, why are they hitting up corner stores? And then it's like, right, they have a thing for sweets. There was one in particular that kept, you know, dabbling in sweets. It's like, oh, we could give you all the chocolate, even let you find a way to make your own. I love that they're kind of messing with him a little bit. But, yeah, it turns out the main crux of their plan is, it's actually really amazingly devious. I'm like, this is some BDE move that they're planning. But essentially their plan is, because the moment they found out where the flux of it goes, because they send out their message like, hey, Cybermen, even Daleks, let's all work together. The Centaurs extend our 3 fingers out to you. And he's like, why are you, like, willing to help them? But they also, like, left out one species. Is like, no, because you're disgusting. You know, you're not getting anything from us. But it's like, oh, let's all meet and we can basically survive all of this together. The big move and they have planned is to get everyone together. Basically, the only thing that can counter antimatter, which is like, oh, so it's an antimatter situation. The reason why it's working like this is because it's antimatter from outside the universe injected into the universe, devouring everything. But what slows down antimatter is a whole bunch of matter. So that's how they plan on saving themselves. They're basically going to be throwing every, like, Dalek, every Cyberman that shows up, wiping out these armies, and then they're going to use the Lupari shields that were meant to protect Earth to protect themselves. This way, what's remaining in the universe, hey, not only did we conquer, we pulled off the greatest conquer ever because we wiped out the largest amount of the Daleks' armies, the Cybermen's armies, but we're the only army standing. We're going to be the greatest conquerors and the savior. So there's a twofold to that. You're like, wow. Because even she's like, from a perspective, it's like, you know, that's pretty, like, big for them to do what they're doing. I'm like, that is some devious, big, supervillain plot levels there. But then, like, where did the Grand Serpent think he was going to, I guess, like, he was going to swoop in, betray them, and it's like, cool, I'm going to be the top dog. It's like, once again, everyone's trying to usurp themselves, also having no idea, like, what Swarm and Azure are up to. I was wondering if there was some connection between that and the Grand Serpent. It's like, no, just everyone inside the universe is, you know, I mean, that was the whole point they brought up a couple episodes ago. Like, the Centaurans are trying, it's like there's not much of the universe left, but everyone's trying to gobble up what they can. Not just them, the Cybermen are the same way. Like, I think that was the whole point that Bell was like, there's not much of the universe left, so why are you doing it? It's like everyone's going for scraps. It's like, everyone wants to be the final one. Everyone wants to be top dog to get what's left, you know? And that's kind of sad, like, to know, like, rather than coming together, it's like, no, everybody's out to get theirs. You know, it's like, no, this is mine. No, this is mine. This is mine. So it's kind of sad to know that the entire universe can't even come together, even at the end when most of it has been ravaged the way it is and has been. I am curious, like, whatever did happen to the guy that Bell had saved from going inside of that passenger. Like, I wonder whatever happened to him and anyone else that was left in the universe. Maybe he's just out there, well, somewhere, you know? Which he owes Bell his life, but he may never know that. Well, he probably believes it, but he was just so like that place gave him hope, and Bell kind of took that last hope away, even if she did save him. You know, he'd probably rather die believing the lie than live with the truth, type of thing. Who knows? But since I referenced him earlier, we do kind of get to know what Swarm and Azure's plan is, because Azure kind of explains, like, this is payback, because not only do we have the division, we have we have you, and we have the means to destroy the universe, because it's the ultimate, like, payback against the Doctor, because it's like, you and the division, like, locked us up and basically kept us in a state of suffering forever, living every death over and over again. So we're basically paying that back. What we're going to do is we're going to destroy the universe, and just at the end, we're going to rewind it all back, and it's going to happen over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because of what we went through, we're basically paying it back to the universe tenfold. Because their plan also is to, when it's all said and done, Atropos is supposed to be the last place to get destroyed, because in that moment, time is going to be let free. Because essentially, like, Swarm and Azure are like cultists. They're a part of the time cult. They worship and love time, because time is like all this powerful being that needs to be allowed to run rampant and run free. And that's their plan, to let it run free. And what was interesting too, and I think this is a fascinating thing, like, we never get a resolve to this, but I'm assuming it's tied to the Doctor's past. The fact is, Azure's like, why is your way so much better than ours? Like, the fact is, you want everything to live, like, why is something, like, because the I guess is like, to me, I'm like, I would assume that applies to all humanity. Like, I think that would apply to everything in the universe. So I don't know if that was like an attack on them from the your universal's perspective on, like, oh, like, everyone in your universe wants to, like, keep, well, everything, every being, every species alive to live. Or it seemed like Azure was more so pointing at it being like a weird thing that the Doctor has. It's like, why do you care so much? And part of me wonders, is it because the Doctor, during her past lives within Division, she was responsible for so much death that maybe now, like, it's so ingrained in her that she wants to try and make up for her past, that's why she wants everything to live, because it's like, right, what the Division did, like, altering everything. So it's like everything and everyone has a right to live their life the way they want to, and not have it shifted to be something else. Because for her, it's like, in the grand scheme of things, there's a reason for everything. The universe is meant to be the way it is. Everything happens for a reason. And the Division counters that, So that's what, like, I'm wondering if that's somewhere ingrained in her. Maybe it's also the fact is that, once again, maybe it has something to do with her being the timeless child. Maybe it's like, from where she's from, maybe there's some ties to that. Like, there's something ingrained in her. Like, I don't think it is just like won't most things in this universe, like, in our universe, have that perspective? But it seemed like they were implying, like, the Doctor goes even further, even above and beyond that. We had the whole Vendor and Diane thing, which I haven't touched on yet, where Diane's pretty quick on figuring stuff out. I mean, granted, she's had, time and space work a little differently there, which I even love that when, circling back a little bit, sorry, I'm all over the place, but it just, saying that reminded me of, like, when they came back in, like, after, like, the Centaurans had gotten wiped out, like, at one point, like, in the tunnels, like, Dan and Yaz and Jericho and Williamson had came back, and they were like, it's like, oh, where'd the potato heads go? And he's like, and Dan was like, oh, it must be like a time thing. It must be because time is messing up around us and not space. And then Yas is like, oh my God, you're totally getting it now. It's like, yeah, you spend enough time with this, like, it starts to make a lot of sense to you, because the space stayed the same. It's just time around them is warping and messing up. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. But circling back to it, Diane had figured out things because she had been there long enough to know how things work. Because Vendor had hoped that he'd find Belle there, but the problem is Belle wasn't in there, and, like, Diane's like, I'm the only person that's left. Everyone else had already kind of been dealt with. So it's interesting how the places inside the passenger works, that there's certain locations, like, if you try to go to the water, there's barriers, but they teleport you to another section. Well, Diane ended up being able to dig up basically the systems of it, and so in that moment, Vendor decides to shoot it, and then that gives them the stairs, and they land outside of the passengers where Swarm and Azure left them. And so in that moment, they were able to reach out to the Doctor, which is like, wait, you know Vendor? It's like, how do you know Vendor? You're the one he's looking for. It's like, yeah. And they luckily find, get reunited. It's like, Dan and Diane and Belle and Bender, and she's like, oh, so we're having a baby, and he's like, oh my god, it's like, so extra reason to like survive all of this. Carna Vista, I love that whole thing too, where like when they did show up to save the second Doctor earlier, that Dan saved Carna Vista, and he was like, fetch your dog, and I did. He's like, oh my god, that dude is actually really good, you know. So I love that. Sadly, when it was all said and done, Claire was able to get away because of the ring, but Jericho dropped his, and trying to shoot the door closed so the Centaurians don't come after him, he ended up destroying it. While all that's going down, the plan enacts, you know, the Centaurians show up, and then comes, you know, the Daleks and the Cybermen. They get wiped out, but the Doctor is, in particular, Carna Vista, has control. He, like, as a Lupari, I know the ins and outs of these Lupari ships. So everyone at the commands, I like electrocuted and knocked them out, and I have complete and utter control over this. So you guys are going to be the buffer zone for it as well. So the Centaurians get wiped out. Sadly, Jericho doesn't have a way off the ship, you know, and like there's no way for the Doctor to get the TARDIS inside. And he's like, no, it's okay. Like, I've lived more in this time, like, connected to you than I have in the past 2 decades, you know. And then the Centaurian comes to visit, and he's like, oh, he says his name, Jericho, what was it? Something of scum or something like that. He's like, I should have written that autobiography because that would have been a good title, you know? And it's just like, you know, it's sad that things ended that way. It's just like, you know, but I mean, he had quite the adventure for like that past like 3 or 4 years. He was venturing out with Dan and Yaz all over the world, like being able to see the sights that he was able to see, you know? It's heartbreaking that things ended that way. And even Claire was like, no, like she blames herself, but you know, it's nothing could have been done, but it's just sad that things ended that way. But Jericho accepted things. He's like, I was able to see so much in this time. Like, he doesn't regret it one bit, you know? Everyone playing their role and everything. I was hoping Jericho would be able to come. It's sad that it played out like that. But it's not enough just with the Lupari shield, because there's still enough residue left from the flux itself. So Diane suggests, why don't we use a passenger? And you're just like, wow. And then, you know, Diane's like, see, I told you they underestimated, because they thought she wasn't anything important, when in actuality she is. She is significant. And so they use a passenger to absorb the last of the flux, so saving what's left of the universe. But in the process, the Swarm and Azure take the other Doctor to Atropo. But the thing is, the flux was stopped, so they were like, oh, we offer you the Doctor. We came here basically in glory. Because I love that, like, the time manifested itself as Swarm, and she's like, oh, nice way to kind of feed the ego there, huh? But it's like, nope, you failed me. So it kind of wipes them out. But for them, it's like, ascension, ha 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 ha. Like, I don't know if that's just kind of like you've become a part of time now, or whether that's just a situation of like you have been wiped out of existence. Or the case, maybe the Doctor does pick up the watch, and it's like, and now time manifests itself as a Doctor wearing a different coat. She's like, oh, I like the coat. I'm like, is that supposed to be just because it's the inverse of the coat she actually has on? But it's like, oh, so like, what are you going to do? And it's like, no, you actually get to go free. And it's like, why? But it's like, no, it's because it's only a matter of time. Like, Doctor, there's no more regenerations. You will get your reckoning will come. And it's just like, so go ahead. Like, nothing can last forever, Doctor, not even you. You know, and it's just, and time just lets her go. But kind of enjoy what time you have left. You never know how much that is. So when it's all said and done, though, everyone goes their separate ways. Vinder, Belle, and their baby are going with Carna Vista, and it's like, hey, the family and the dog. I love it. It's like, come on, let's go out there in the universe. Adventures await. Which, speaking of the universe, it's like, I guess maybe given enough time, the universe will heal on its own. All that was lost. Not everything is dead. There was just a heavy amount of damage. So, like, the fact is we haven't, like, it's not like the flux was reversed, but I guess it's like the universe, given enough time, will heal itself, will repopulate to some extent. So, the Grand Serpent was taken care of. Vinder, because he was like, oh, who are you? I guess it's like, for him, it's like, you're so insignificant in his mind, it's like, you're not even worth remembering. Like, you've met, he put you through the ringer, like, but it's like you're so insignificant to him, it doesn't matter. But they send him through a door. It's like, I'm the guy that knows what exile feels like. And so the serpent was exiled on a piece of rock. It's like, right now you're all alone, nothing and no one, and what that exile does to you. I mean, he tried to, like, his exile from being the dictator he was is why he did all this, because he wanted to, he was like, I was a good ruler. And it's like, yeah, sure you were, buddy. Oh yeah, because Time's actually the one that actually fixed the Doctor, like, put all three versions of her back together. Claire and Kate get dropped back off at 2021. Earlier they had put Williamson back to his time, because it's like, right, what you do in history is too important, so just leave this up to us. This is our battle. You've already set the ground. You did so much for us already. So he kind of tips his hat to everyone and bows out. Dan tried to go back to normal life, and it's like, oh, Diane, like, we could go to that dinner, and she's like, no. He's like, no, it wasn't my fault, I was late, but I think it's just she needs time to deal with everything that went down, and just it's a lot, so sadly things didn't work out on that front. But the Doctor and Yaz are waiting for him, so gets his own room on the TARDIS, and so the Doctor does apologize to Yaz about, like, right, I didn't tell you everything. I shouldn't have shut you out. I should have told you what I was up to at Carna Vista and everything. I was trying to get information on me, but, I'm assuming the Doctor doesn't have one of those things, like Carna Vista, because it's like, right. Well, to be fair, she doesn't have memories to talk about the division anyway, so I guess it wouldn't be applicable in her circumstances. But she does have the watch, and she hides it on the TARDIS and says, like, I want you to, like, hide this in a place I can't reach it unless I really ask for it. So that's so interesting, and I think that speaks volumes, that the Doctor having everything you've ever wanted in the palm of your hands. But I'm wondering, is it because for her it's like knowing the truth? It's like, do I want to know who I was back then, considering what the division is all about, what it's done? Like, do I really want those answers? Because she's scared of who she, like, once I find out the truth about who I was, there's no going back. There's no putting that genie back into the bottle. And how will knowing who I was, who knows if it'll change who I am now, like, because that's the thing of, like, we always want answers, and just the answers we get aren't always what we want. But the time will come, the Doctor will have to get those memories back. It's just a matter of when and under what circumstances. Like I said, there's still so much at play here. Like, the division stuff is still active. That organization is still going on. So, like I said, who's going to take up the mantle after her mom when it comes to all of this? Getting to that ship isn't going to be the easiest thing. I mean, Swarm and Azure had to find a roundabout way to get there. The Doctor kind of got brought there beforehand. So, I'm curious, like, does anyone else in the division know that the Doctor came looking? Her mom did, but, like, was she the only one, or were other members filled in? Like, because it seemed like she was, like, the head honcho, but I'm curious, like, was it just her? Because she was at because that Ood is still there, kind of acting as the helper in that place. So, like I said, someone else is eventually going to come by. So I'm curious, is it going to be a thing of, like, will he mention the Doctor? I guess, was it just one person leading at a time? Is it a council of people? So many questions about the inner workings of the division that we're still left with answers. Yes, the Flux has been defeated. This has been stopped once again, but still so much remains. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this all takes us going forward. There is going to be a new Doctor Who, not too far off, as we are... it was either New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. I think we're going to have a special. So I think the next coming things are going to be quite a few specials. It's this, the New Year's Eve or New Year's Day special. And then, like, I think there's supposed to be, like, one more after this. That's going to be later in 2022, I think. I think if I remember correctly what it was saying at the end, I think it's New Year's Day. Now, whether or not that's going to be the last one for Jodie or not, or whether, like, the third one in 2022 is going to be that, either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this takes us going forward, what the next story is going to be. How much is the Doctor going to tell you? I mean, I think she has plans to tell her everything, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.